Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hey, last week we discussed the President's upcoming trip. I promised I'd come back and go through the schedule in more detail. I'm happy to do that today. And Sean tells me there's another topic you might want to talk about as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that after we go through the schedule here. But first of all, Secretary Tillerson will accompany the President for most of the trip, breaking off just before the G7 meeting. And as you know, the trip will begin in Saudi Arabia. It's a historic trip. After an arrival ceremony in Riyadh, the President will have coffee with King Salman, attend a royal banquet, and hold bilateral meetings with the King, the Crown Prince, and the Deputy Crown Prince. He will also participate in a signing ceremony of several agreements that will further solidify U.S.-Saudi security and economic cooperation. That evening, the President and the First Lady will join members of the Saudi royal family for an official dinner. The next day, the President will hold bilateral meetings with Gulf Cooperation Council leaders, as well as broader meetings with all the Gulf state leaders. In the afternoon, he will meet and have lunch with leaders of more than 50 Muslim countries, where he will deliver an inspiring yet direct speech on the need to confront radical ideology and his hopes, the President's hopes, for a peaceful vision of Islam to dominate across the world. The speech is intended to unite the broader Muslim world against common enemies of all civilization and to demonstrate America's commitment to our Muslim partners. The President will then participate in the inauguration of a new center intended to fight radicalism and promote moderation. By establishing and operating this center, our Muslim friends, including Saudi Arabia, are taking a firm stand against extremism and those who use a perverted interpretation of religion to advance their criminal and political agendas. The President also looks forward to participating in a Twitter forum with young people who will be able to live tweet his remarks to people all over the world. The President will then continue on to Jerusalem, where he will meet with President Rivlin and lay a wreath at Yad Vashem. The President will then deliver remarks at the Israel Museum and celebrate the unique history of Israel and of the Jewish people, while reaffirming America's unshakable bond with our closest ally in the Middle East. Later that day, he will meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu. That night, the President and the First Lady will join the Prime Minister and Mrs. Netanyahu for a private dinner. The following morning, the President will meet President Abbas in Bethlehem, where he will convey his administration's eagerness to facilitate an agreement that ends the conflict. And he will urge Palestinian leaders to take steps that will help lead to peace. And he will visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and say a prayer at the Western Wall. In Rome the next day, the President will have an audience with the Pope at the Vatican. He looks forward to celebrating the rich contributions of Catholics to America and to the world, and to discussing a range of issues of mutual concern, some of which I summarized last time. Before leaving the Vatican, the President will meet the Cardinal Secretary of State and will tour St. Peter's. Later that afternoon, the President will meet with the King and the Prime Minister of Belgium and the heads of state and government of the host country to the NATO alliance. He'll also meet President Mattarella before departing Rome for Brussels. The next morning, the President will travel to the EU headquarters to meet with the presidents of the European Union and of the European Council. He'll then hold a working lunch with the newly elected President of France, whom he will meet in person for the first time. That afternoon, the President will deliver remarks at the unveiling of NATO's memorial to our shared struggle in front of a piece of the Berlin Wall and a segment of the World Trade Center. He will reaffirm America's commitment to the alliance and repeat his insistence that for the good of the alliance, all members must share responsibility and share burden. Joined by Secretary Mattis, he will participate in the NATO leaders meeting and dinner before then traveling to Sicily for the G7. Throughout the summit, he will meet bilaterally with leaders, including the Italian Prime Minister. In the formal meetings, he will press America's economic agenda and call for greater security cooperation. On the first night of the summit, he will also attend a concert performed by the La Scala Philharmonic Orchestra, followed by a leaders' dinner hosted by the President of Italy. Before departing Italy for home, the President will speak to American and Allied servicemen and women and their families. He will thank them for their sacrifices they all make to keep us safe, and also recap the highlights and accomplishments of the trip.